The trail curved hard to the left, dropping through a dense corridor of Douglas fir and ponderosa pine, the kind of trail that runners dream about. Soft duff underfoot, cool shadows sliding over the path, the smell of resin and earth rising with every footfall. Kyle Burgess was 4 miles into his run, moving well, his breathing settling into that familiar rhythm that long-distance trail runners spend years cultivating. The clock on his GPS watch read just past 7 in the morning. The mountains of Utah were waking up around him, the light coming through the trees in long golden shafts, and everything felt the way it always does on a good morning run. Clean, quiet, almost sacred. He had no idea that something was watching him from the branches above. What happened to Kyle Burgess on that October morning in 2020 became one of the most documented, most studied, most viscerally terrifying wildlife encounters in recent trail running history. It was caught on his phone camera. Every second of it. 6 minutes and 22 seconds of footage that, when released to the public, spread across the internet with the speed and force of something that simply could not be looked away from. Because it showed, in real time, what it looks like when a mountain lion decides that a human being is something worth following, worth testing, worth hunting. If you want to understand what trail running truly is, not just the sport, but the raw reality of moving through wild spaces where you are not the apex predator, then this story is essential. Stay with us. Hit that subscribe button right now if you haven't already, because the stories we tell here are the ones that matter, the ones that reach into the chest and remind you what it means to be alive and moving through a world that was not designed for human comfort. This is the story of Kyle Burgess, the mountain lion, and 6 minutes and 22 seconds that changed how a generation of trail runners thinks about the wilderness. Slate Canyon sits in the foothills east of Provo, Utah. It is the kind of terrain that draws trail runners from across the American West. Technically demanding, relentlessly beautiful, threaded with single-track paths that climb and descend through juniper, scrub oak, and the big conifers that begin to dominate as elevation rises. It is also very much mountain lion country. Utah has one of the healthier mountain lion populations in the western United States, a fact that wildlife biologists celebrate and that most hikers and runners prefer not to think about too carefully. The animals are there. They move at dawn and dusk most often. They are ambush predators, which means they prefer cover, elevation, the ability to observe without being observed. A trail runner moving alone through dense forest at early morning is, from a purely ecological standpoint, moving through exactly the kind of environment a mountain lion is designed to exploit. Kyle Burgess was an experienced outdoor runner. He knew these trails. He had run them many times before. On this particular morning, he was moving along a stretch of the canyon trail when he rounded a corner and saw something that made him pull out his phone almost instinctively, the way modern humans have been conditioned to document the extraordinary things the world occasionally drops in front of them. On the trail ahead, he saw mountain lion cubs. More than one of them. Small, spotted, tumbling over each other in the way that young predators do when the world still feels like a game. The mother was nowhere to be seen. Except she was. She dropped from a branch overhead. Not from the ground ahead, not from a slope to the side. From above. The way mountain lions hunt. The way they have always hunted. Pumas concolor, to give the species its full scientific name, are among the most physically extraordinary large predators on the continent. They are not the biggest cats in the Americas. The jaguar holds that title. But they are arguably the most athletically capable. An adult female mountain lion weighs somewhere between 90 and 120 pounds. An adult male can reach 200 pounds or more. They are built for explosive power, for the kind of acceleration that covers distance before the prey animal's nervous system has even registered that danger has arrived. Their hind legs are disproportionately large and muscular compared to their forequarters, giving them a capacity for vertical leaping that seems to belong more to fiction than biology. A mountain lion can leap 40 feet horizontally from a standing position. It can jump 15 feet straight up. Its bite is calibrated to deliver force between the skull and the spine of its prey, separating the vertebrae with surgical precision. When the mother dropped into the trail behind Kyle Burgess, she was not retreating, she was not fleeing, she was positioning. And then she began to follow him. What Kyle did in the next 6 minutes and 22 seconds has been analyzed by wildlife biologists, survival experts, trail running coaches, and behavioral psychologists. It has been viewed tens of millions of times. It has been discussed in classrooms and wildlife management offices and running clubs from Utah to New Zealand. Because what he did was, by almost every measure, exactly right. And it was also terrifying in a way that no amount of preparation can entirely blunt when the moment arrives for real. He backed away, slowly. He kept his eyes on the lion. He made himself large, spreading his arms, raising his voice. He shouted at her. He threw rocks in her direction. Not to harm her, but to startle her, to establish that he was not prey, that he was not going to run, that he was something that pushed back. He kept talking to the lion throughout, a continuous stream of words that served a double purpose. It maintained the sound pressure that predators find unsettling, and it almost certainly helped Kyle himself stay mentally anchored in a situation that would have shattered the composure of most people alive. Because the lion did not leave, she followed. Every time he stopped, she stopped. Every time he moved, she moved. She feinted toward him twice, those explosive forward lunges that mountain lions use to test whether prey will bolt. When prey bolts, the hunt typically escalates. When prey holds its ground, the calculation changes. Kyle held his ground. He kept backing up. He kept making noise. 6 minutes and 22 seconds. Nearly 400 meters of trail. A mountain lion shadowing a human being at a distance of sometimes less than 10 feet. And then, finally, she turned away, walked back to her cubs, disappeared into the trees. Kyle Burgess stood on the trail, breathing hard, and said, "On camera," a sentence that has since been quoted in every major account of this encounter. He said, "That's a big mountain lion," which under the circumstances ranks among the most composed things a human being has ever said. But to understand what this encounter truly means, what it reveals about mountain lions, about the wild spaces we run through, and about the astonishing biology and behavior of one of North America's most impressive predators, we need to go much deeper than the 6 minutes of footage. We need to understand what a mountain lion is, what it does, how it sees the world, and why the story of Kyle Burgess, far from being a cautionary tale about the dangers of the wilderness, is actually a story about what happens when two incredibly capable creatures meet in a space they both belong to, and both find a way through. Mountain lions go by more names than almost any other animal in North America: puma, cougar, panther, catamount. The list extends to over 40 documented regional names, more than any other mammal on the continent according to the Guinness World Records. This linguistic abundance reflects something real about the animal's range and its hold on the human imagination. Mountain lions are found from the southern tip of South America to the Canadian Yukon. They occupy more latitudinal range than any other wildland mammal in the Western Hemisphere. They live in tropical rainforests, in high alpine meadows, in desert scrublands, in the swampy lowlands of Florida, and in the dry chaparral hills of California. They have been documented moving through suburban neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and Boulder, and Salt Lake City. A young male mountain lion famously crossed the George Washington Bridge into New York City in 2011, wandering through Greenwich before being captured. They are, by any biological measure, one of the most adaptable large predators the planet has produced. And yet, despite this extraordinary range, despite their successful colonization of virtually every habitat type in 2 continents, mountain lions remain almost completely invisible. That is their defining characteristic. Not speed, not strength, not the spectacular spotted coat of the leopard or the massive mane of the lion. Invisibility. The ability to be completely, comprehensively absent from human awareness while occupying the same space. Biologists who have spent careers studying mountain lions routinely describe the experience of searching for them in known territories. Camera traps, GPS collar data, fresh tracks in the mud, and simply never seeing one. A lion can live for years in close proximity to human habitation without a single documented sighting. This is not a coincidence or a lucky characteristic. It is the product of millions of years of evolution in a role that demands it. Mountain lions are ambush predators. Their hunting strategy is built entirely around not being seen until the moment they choose to be. They stalk in silence, using cover, using terrain, using the natural tendency of prey animals to watch ahead, rather than above or behind. They can hold completely still for extraordinary lengths of time, watching a deer or a rabbit or an elk calf work its way closer, patient in a way that feels almost philosophical. And when they move with a precision and an economy that makes most other large predators look clumsy by comparison. The literature on mountain lion hunting behavior is genuinely remarkable. A study published by researchers at the Santa Cruz Puma Project, one of the longest-running mountain lion research programs in the world, documented lions making kills in terrain that their GPS tracks showed they had studied for days in advance. They would visit a location repeatedly over a week, mapping it, understanding the patterns of the prey animals that moved through it, and then position themselves for an ambush in a way that demonstrated something disturbingly close to planning. This is not the blind opportunism of a scavenging animal. This is targeted, considered predation by an animal whose cognitive abilities are far greater than most people realize. Mountain lions are not typically considered to be among the most intelligent of large cats. That designation usually goes to leopards or jaguars, but field research has increasingly revealed a level of behavioral complexity in pumas that demands respect. They demonstrate clear evidence of learning from failed hunts, adjusting their tactics in subsequent attempts. They show territorial behaviors that involve not just the physical marking of boundaries, the familiar scrapes and scent deposits that any experienced tracker knows how to read, but what appears to be active monitoring of neighboring territories and strategic adjustment of range in response to changes in prey density. Young lions, after dispersing from their mothers, face a learning curve that wildlife biologists describe as genuinely perilous. A significant percentage of young dispersing males die before establishing a successful home territory, not from predation or disease, but from the failure to master the skills needed to hunt consistently. The ones that survive are, by definition, the most capable learners. The mother lion that dropped from that branch onto the trail behind Kyle Burgess was an animal at the absolute peak of what evolution has produced in a medium-sized terrestrial predator. She was not malfunctioning. She was not unusually aggressive or aberrant. She was doing precisely what every instinct, every learned behavior, every physiological capability she possessed was oriented toward, protecting her cubs from a large, unknown animal that had blundered too close to them. Mountain lion mothers are among the most protective parents in the North American wilderness. A female will typically have 2 to 3 cubs per litter, born after a 91-day gestation period. She raises them entirely alone. The male plays no role in cub rearing. In fact, his presence near young cubs is dangerous, since adult males will sometimes kill cubs that they did not sire. The female therefore establishes a core area around her den site that she defends with exceptional vigilance, and the period from birth until the cubs are old enough to travel with her safely, roughly 6 to 8 weeks, is the time of maximum maternal aggression. An adult female mountain lion with small cubs near a den site is, from a wildlife biology standpoint, one of the more genuinely dangerous situations a person can walk into. Kyle Burgess walked into exactly that situation. The cubs he saw tumbling on the trail were very young. Their spotted coats were clearly visible. Mountain lions are born with spots, which fade as they mature, and the presence of visible spots indicates cubs under roughly 6 months of age. At that developmental stage, the cubs are still entirely dependent on the mother, unable to hunt, largely unable to travel long distances, vulnerable to any number of potential threats. The mother had almost certainly heard Kyle approaching well before he saw the cubs. Mountain lions have hearing calibrated to detect the high-frequency sounds of small mammals moving through grass, which means they can pick up the footfalls and breath and movement of a human runner at significant distance. She would have known exactly where he was. She may have positioned herself on that branch above the trail in anticipation of his arrival, the way a lion positions itself before an ambush. She chose not to attack. This is the crucial fact. The fact that deserves more examination than it usually receives in popular accounts of this encounter. An adult female mountain lion in close proximity to vulnerable cubs, confronted with a large unknown animal within striking distance, chose not to make contact. She followed. She tested. She applied pressure. But she did not commit to an attack. This is consistent with what wildlife biologists understand about mountain lion decision-making around humans. Lions that have regular exposure to human presence in their territory, and in Utah's Wasatch Front, this means virtually every lion that lives there, appear to maintain a clear behavioral distinction between humans and prey. They do not reliably classify us as food. This is not because we are too large or too dangerous, though those factors play a role. It is because we behave differently from prey animals in ways that lions appear to read accurately. We look back. We make noise. We move unpredictably. We do not display the particular combination of behaviors, head down, moving steadily, attention forward and down, that triggers the full predatory sequence in a mountain lion. Running changes this calculation. The biomechanics of trail running, the forward lean, the steady rhythmic movement, the attention directed at the trail ahead rather than the surroundings, more closely approximate the movement signature of prey than almost anything else a human being typically does in the woods. This is not a theoretical concern. There are documented cases of mountain lion attacks on trail runners in California, Colorado, New Mexico, Washington, and British Columbia, among other places. In 2018, a mountain lion killed one runner and seriously injured another on a trail in the Horsetooth Mountain open space in Colorado. The victim who died, Travis Kaufman, survived by fighting the lion off with a rock and by pinning its head to the ground, a story of survival that deserves its own extended telling. In 2004, a woman was killed by a mountain lion while trail running near Auburn, California. These attacks are rare. They are statistically uncommon events in the context of the millions of trail running miles logged each year in mountain lion territory. But they are not random. They follow patterns that research is beginning to illuminate. They involve isolated individuals, moving quickly, in areas with either high lion density or conditions, drought, prey scarcity, that increase lion-human overlap. They tend to occur at dawn and dusk. They often involve young, dispersing male lions who have not yet successfully established a home territory and are hungry, desperate, and still developing the behavioral boundaries around humans that older, established lions maintain more reliably. What Kyle Burgess encountered was different. He encountered a mother, a defensive animal, not a hunting one. The distinction matters enormously, both for understanding what happened and for understanding what it means for anyone who runs trails in lion country. The behaviors Kyle deployed, backing away slowly, maintaining eye contact, making himself appear large, vocalizing loudly, throwing objects, never turning to run, are exactly the behaviors recommended by wildlife agencies across the western United States. They work because they disrupt the behavioral script that a lion follows when engaging potential prey. Prey animals run, prey animals look away, prey animals make specific vocalizations, alarm calls, distress sounds, that are distinct from the continuous assertive vocalization Kyle maintained. By behaving in ways that did not fit the prey template, he consistently gave the lion reason to pause her threat assessment, to hold the line between defensive display and active predation. 6 minutes and 22 seconds is a very long time to maintain that composure. Watch the video, and the most striking thing is not the lion, it is Kyle's voice. He does not scream. He does not plead. He does not collapse into the kind of high-pitched, irregular vocalization that might trigger the predatory response he was trying to avoid. He shouts. He uses words, actual sentences, directed at the lion, maintaining vocal dominance throughout. At several points, his voice breaks with the effort of shouting, but he never stops. He keeps the sound coming, continuous, assertive, present. Wildlife biologists who reviewed the footage noted something interesting. The lion's body language changed over the course of the encounter. In the early portions, she was in a fully alert, forward-oriented threat posture, weight distributed over her haunches, ears up and forward, tail low and slightly curved. As the encounter continued, her posture gradually shifted. The tail began to move in the slow, deliberate way that cats display when they are recalibrating, not the sharp, agitated lashing of an animal preparing to strike, but the thoughtful oscillation of an animal processing information that doesn't quite fit its expectations. By the final minute of the footage, she was no longer fully committed to the pursuit. She was evaluating an exit, which she eventually took. The aftermath of the encounter was, in its own way, as revealing as the encounter itself. Kyle Burgess posted the video online without much expectation of its reach. He was shaken, clearly, but he was also a runner, and runners process things through movement, through the continuation of the thing they were doing before the world intervened. He finished his run, he went home, he ate breakfast, and then the world arrived, in the form of millions of people who watched 6 minutes and 22 seconds of footage and understood, perhaps for the first time, what it actually looks and sounds like when a human being and a mountain lion occupy the same few feet of trail. The response was enormous. News organizations around the world ran the story. Wildlife biologists gave interviews. Trail running communities online went into extended discussions about safety protocols, about the nature of risk in wild spaces, about whether the danger of mountain lions should change the way people approach the sport. Utah Division of Wildlife Resources issued statements. YouTube channels dedicated to wilderness survival and wildlife behavior posted analysis videos that themselves accumulated millions of views. And within the trail running community specifically, the conversation that followed revealed something profound about why people run trails in the first place. Because the response was not uniformly fearful. A significant portion of runners who watched that video, who sat with the full 6 minutes and 22 seconds, found themselves experiencing something unexpected. Not just relief that Kyle survived, not just horror at the danger he faced, but something closer to awe. A recognition that the mountain, the trail, the cold morning air, and the spotted cubs and the silent dropping of a large animal from a branch overhead, all of it was real, in a way that the padded, managed, risk-assessed environments of modern life very rarely are. Real in a way that running seeks out, even when it doesn't find it in such undiluted form. This is not a romanticization of danger. It is an acknowledgement of something that wildlife biologists and anthropologists and psychologists have been saying for decades in various forms. That the human nervous system was built for a world that contained genuine predators. That the alertness and presence and sensory engagement that natural environments demand are not pathological states but biological inheritances that help us feel fully alive in ways that controlled environments cannot replicate. Trail running at its deepest is a conversation with that inheritance. It is putting the body back into terrain that shaped it, and occasionally, rarely, startlingly, unforgettably, that terrain answers back. Kyle Burgess was asked afterward whether he would continue to run those trails. He said yes. He said it without hesitation. Mountain lions are not the only large predators that trail runners and hikers occasionally encounter in the American West, but they occupy a unique position in the ecology of fear around wild spaces. Grizzly bears generate more anxiety perhaps in the regions where they occur, Yellowstone, Glacier, the Canadian Rockies, and their encounters with humans are in many ways more dangerous in terms of raw statistical outcomes. Black bears are far more commonly seen, but rarely cause serious injury. Wolves, whose return to the American West has been one of the great conservation stories of the past 3 decades, are almost never involved in incidents with humans. But the mountain lion holds a particular place because of its invisibility. Because you cannot see them when they are watching you. Because every trail run in lion country involves the possibility of being observed by something that you have no way of detecting. There are an estimated 30,000 mountain lions in the western United States. California alone is home to somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000. Utah's population is estimated at around 2,500, though lion populations are notoriously difficult to census accurately. Their home ranges are enormous. An adult male may maintain a territory of 150 square miles or more. They overlap with human recreational areas extensively, because the steep, rugged, forested terrain that mountain lions prefer for hunting and denning is precisely the terrain that trail runners, mountain bikers, and hikers seek out for the same reasons that make it excellent predator habitat: the complexity, the cover, the elevation change, the wildness. For every Kyle Burgess encounter, visible, documented, resolved without injury, wildlife biologists estimate there are hundreds of undetected observations. Moments when a lion watched a runner from cover and chose not to make itself known. Moments when the invisible predator made its own calculation and decided to remain part of the background. Camera trap research in areas with high human recreational traffic consistently shows mountain lions moving through the same terrain used by trail runners, often within hours of each other, with the lions frequently pausing at points of terrain advantage, ridge lines, rock outcroppings, the elevated bases of large trees, and looking in the direction of recent human passage. They are watching. That is simply the truth of moving through lion country. They are watching, and in the overwhelming majority of cases, they have decided that the watching is sufficient, that whatever this moving, upright, occasionally very loud creature is, it does not warrant further investigation. The Santa Cruz Puma Project, which has been tracking mountain lions in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California since 2008, has documented something that feels almost philosophical when you sit with it long enough. Lions in areas with high human density, areas traversed daily by thousands of hikers, runners, cyclists, show dramatically altered movement patterns compared to lions in more remote areas. They become more nocturnal. They avoid trails and roads during peak human use hours. They compress their active periods into the windows between last night's runners and the first runners of the morning. They adjust. They learn. And in doing so, they manage to sustain healthy population densities in landscapes that are simultaneously among the most heavily recreated and most heavily urbanized in North America. This is adaptation in real time, and it is remarkable. The study of mountain lion adaptation to human presence has produced findings that have substantially revised older models of how large carnivores respond to human encroachment. The traditional assumption was that human activity in wildlife habitat was straightforwardly negative for predators, that it displaced them, stressed them, reduced their hunting success, and ultimately pushed them toward the edges of habitable range. And for some species, and some contexts, That remains true. But mountain lions are proving to be more behaviorally flexible than that model predicted. In some suburban adjacent habitats, lions are actually accessing reliable year-round prey, deer, that also thrive in the mosaic of open space and residential landscaping that characterizes California and Colorado foothill communities. The lions follow the deer, and the deer follow the lawns and ornamental plantings and the golf courses and the edges of parks where human activity makes the ground-level vegetation they prefer available in all seasons. What this means for trail runners is both reassuring and clarifying. The mountain lions sharing your favorite single track are almost certainly not desperate, starving animals driven to dangerous behavior by habitat loss and prey scarcity. They are, in many cases, well-fed, territory-established adults who have learned to live alongside human activity with a level of behavioral sophistication that deserves genuine respect. The danger is real. It would be dishonest to pretend otherwise, but it is a specific, manageable danger that careful behavior can substantially mitigate. Running alone, at dawn or dusk, in areas where recent lion activity has been documented, in drought years when deer move unpredictably, these are the conditions that accumulate risk. None of them are absolute prohibitions. All of them are knowable, manageable variables. Trail running exists at this intersection constantly. The intersection of human desire and wild reality. The single track vanishes around a corner, and you don't know what's beyond it. The light changes through the trees, and for a moment the shadows resolve into something. Or don't. The forest holds sounds you can't identify, and smells that your civilized nose can't interpret, but that some part of you, some very old part, knows how to feel. This is why people run trails. This is the conversation the sport is always having with the world that made us. Not the risk for its own sake, not a death wish, not a performance of bravery, but the aliveness, the full, undiluted, bodily aliveness of moving through a world that has not been made entirely safe. Kyle Burgess knew this when he was asked, for the 100th time, how he felt during those 6 minutes. He said, with the kind of plainness that people who have genuinely been scared tend to use, rather than the heightened language that those who haven't been scared prefer, that he felt very alive, that everything was very clear, that he could see every detail of the lion with unusual precision, that time felt strange. What he was describing is the neurological reality of a threat response in a healthy nervous system. The amygdala floods the system with norepinephrine and cortisol. Pupil dilation increases visual acuity. Hearing sharpens. Fine motor skills reduce, while gross motor skills heighten. Time perception distorts. Seconds expand. Information density increases. The body is preparing to do something extraordinary, marshaling every resource it possesses toward a single overwhelming priority: survival. And the mind, running on this extraordinary biological fuel, achieves a clarity that normal life almost never provides. Every detail crisp, every movement intentional, every word chosen with a precision that has nothing to do with intellect and everything to do with life. This is what the mountain delivered to Kyle Burgess on an October morning in 2020. It was not a gift, exactly. It was not something he asked for. It was simply what happens when the wild is genuinely wild, when the predator is genuinely a predator, when the encounter is real rather than mediated, actual rather than observed through a screen. He backed away. He kept his eyes up. He threw rocks and shouted and refused to run, and the mountain lion, the extraordinary, invisible, perfectly evolved machine that had been watching him from that branch, eventually turned away and went back to her cubs. Both of them did what they needed to do. Both of them are still out there. The trail continues to curve left through the Douglas fir, dropping into the canyon, soft duff underfoot, the light coming through the trees in long golden shafts. Somewhere above and behind, there is a branch that overhangs the path, and somewhere in these mountains, a female mountain lion moves with her cubs through terrain she knows completely. She has heard runners before, she will hear them again. She watches, she calculates, she decides. Most of the time, she decides that the watching is enough. But the possibility that this time might be different, that possibility is not a defect in the wilderness. It is part of what the wilderness is, and it is part of what brings us back to it, again and again, lacing up our shoes in the cold early morning, heading out onto the trail before the world has fully woken up, looking for the thing that trail running, at its most essential, has always been about. The feeling of being alive in a world that is real. The encounter between Kyle Burgess and the mountain lion in Slate Canyon has had a measurable effect on how wildlife agencies in Utah and across the American West communicate about lion safety. Prior to the video going viral, most official communications about mountain lion risk were relatively low-key. Information buried on agency websites, mentioned in trail signage in passing, presented in the kind of matter-of-fact tone that official communications default to when the subject is something they would prefer not to alarm people about. After the video, the conversation changed. Not because the risk changed. Mountain lion populations had not dramatically shifted, and the number of documented incidents was not statistically significant, but because a previously abstract possibility had been made concrete and visible and undeniable in a way that 6 minutes of footage can do, in a way that 1,000 words of safety information cannot. Utah Division of Wildlife Resources updated and expanded its mountain lion safety materials. Several state parks in the region installed new signage specifically addressing what to do in an encounter. Trail running organizations in California, Colorado, and Washington developed safety modules referencing the Burgess encounter. Wildlife biologists found themselves with an unexpected communication tool, a real, unscripted, unedited record of exactly what a mountain lion encounter looks like and, crucially, what appropriate human behavior in that encounter looks like. You can tell runners to stand their ground until your voice gives out. Showing them what standing your ground actually looks and sounds like for 6 full minutes while a mountain lion paces and faints on a Utah trail is an entirely different kind of instruction. The mountain lion as a species is doing reasonably well in North America, particularly compared to most large predators globally. This is in stark contrast to its close relatives and to the general pattern for large carnivores worldwide, which is one of dramatic, often catastrophic decline, driven by habitat loss, prey depletion, and direct persecution. Lions, tigers, leopards, cheetahs, jaguars, the big cats of the world are in varying states of crisis. Snow leopards and clouded leopards face extinction pressure that keeps conservation biologists awake at night. The African lion, Panthera leo, once ranging across most of sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, is now present in fragmented populations that total fewer than 25,000 individuals. The Bengal tiger, the most numerous of the tiger subspecies, numbers perhaps 2,500 in the wild. Mountain lions have not faced the same trajectory, at least not in the American West. They were hunted extensively throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, classified as vermin, offered as bounties, pursued with dogs and traps and poison in the same systematic way that nearly eliminated the gray wolf from the contiguous United States. California placed a bounty on mountain lions as late as 1963. But the combination of shifting public attitudes toward predators in the late 20th century and the passage of protective legislation, California classified mountain lions as a specially protected mammal in 1990, a status that has survived multiple ballot challenges, has allowed western lion populations to stabilize and in some areas recover. This is not an uncomplicated success story. Ranchers and livestock owners in lion territory face genuine economic losses from predation that are not adequately addressed by most current compensation programs. The increase in human-lion overlap as both human development and lion populations expand into the same foothill terrain creates conflict that is only going to intensify. And the political ecology of mountain lion management, the tension between wildlife agencies, conservation advocates, livestock interests, and recreational users, is complex and often contentious. But the mountain lion as a species is here, present in sufficient numbers to be the animal that drops from a branch onto a Utah trail on an October morning, that follows a runner for 6 minutes and 22 seconds, that tests and evaluates and ultimately decides not to commit. This is not nothing. This is, in the full context of what has happened to large predators worldwide, something very close to a miracle of coexistence. And trail runners are a part of that coexistence, whether they know it or not. Every person who runs through mountain lion territory and leaves without incident is participating in an ongoing experiment in human-predator overlap. Every runner who behaves appropriately in an encounter, who stands their ground, who backs away slowly, who never turns to run, contributes to the learned behavioral template that lions carry about what humans are and what interactions with them produce. Mountain lions that have positive, or at least non-rewarding experiences of encounters with humans are less likely to escalate future encounters. The behavior of individual runners, collectively and over time, shapes the behavior of the predators that share their trails. This is a responsibility that most trail runners have never been asked to think about, but it is real, and it is consistent with the broader responsibility that comes with choosing to move through wild spaces. To enter a place that is not yours alone is to enter into a relationship with everything that lives there, and that relationship has obligations. Not just to protect yourself, that is the obvious one, but to behave in ways that maintain the ecological and behavioral integrity of the space. Not to feed wildlife, not to habituate predators to human food sources, not to approach or crowd or attempt to interact with animals in ways that normalize their presence with humans in dangerous ways. And to stand your ground when a mountain lion follows you down a trail. The cubs that Kyle saw on that morning in Slate Canyon were young enough that they were still carrying their spots. Mountain lion cubs are born spotted, the markings fading to the characteristic tawny coat by the time they reach 6 months or so. If those cubs were in fact under 6 months old at the time of the encounter, they would have dispersed from their mother somewhere between 12 and 18 months later. Young male lions disperse first and farthest. The distances that dispersing young males cover during their search for an unoccupied home territory can be staggering. Males have been tracked moving 500 miles from their natal territory in their first year of independence. They cross freeways and rivers and mountain ranges, navigating a landscape that is simultaneously their inheritance and their obstacle course, in search of a place where they can be what they were made to be. Some of them die. A significant percentage of dispersing young male mountain lions die, hit by cars, shot by ranchers, killed by older territorial males in boundary disputes. The ones that make it are the most capable, the most adaptable, the most behaviorally flexible. They establish territories. They begin to hunt. They learn their patch of mountain or desert or coastal range. They become invisible in their domain. And eventually, they breed, and the cycle continues. The cubs from that October morning in Slate Canyon are now, if they survived, adult lions, moving through their own territories somewhere in the Utah mountains, watching the trails from cover, making calculations, deciding. Kyle Burgess went back to that trail. Of course he did, because the trail is not made less itself by what happened on it. The Douglas fir and the ponderosa pine and the soft duff underfoot and the long golden shafts of early light are exactly the same. The canyon holds the cold air just as it always did. The birds move through the upper branches with the same quick precision they always have. And somewhere above the trail, in the complex three-dimensional architecture of the forest, a branch extends over the path. And the world continues, as it has always continued, to be a place where extraordinary things happen to people willing to move through it with their eyes open. That is what trail running is. That is what it has always been. You put yourself into a landscape that does not belong to you. You move through it with whatever competence and awareness and willingness you can bring, and you accept that the landscape will sometimes respond in ways that remind you, vividly and completely, of your true position in it. Not at the top, not in control, not safe, in the way that the word safe has come to mean the absence of all risk, but alive, genuinely, bodily, fully alive, in a world that is real. 6 minutes and 22 seconds. A branch overhead, a mountain lion dropping into the trail. Kyle Burgess backed away slowly. He kept his eyes up, he threw rocks and used his voice, and refused to show the thing the predator was looking for, the running, the fleeing, the signal that says prey. And the mountain lion turned away. Both of them went home. The trail is still there. The lions are still there. The morning is still cold and still golden, and the duff is still soft underfoot, and somewhere above the canopy the world is watching, patient and precise, and completely without malice, waiting to see what you will do when it drops from the branch overhead and the calculation begins. Stand your ground. Keep your eyes up. Keep moving, slowly, in the direction of a way. And when it is over, when the lion has turned back into the trees, and the morning has resumed its golden quiet, and you are standing alone on the trail with your heart rate climbing down from somewhere stratospheric, and the whole encounter condensed into a vibrating residue of pure aliveness, go home. Eat breakfast. Come back tomorrow. Because the trail doesn't end here. It never ends here. It just curves left, drops through the trees, and disappears around the next corner, into whatever is waiting on the other side.